Good evening. Welcome to Be Inspired, a show that is dedicated to bringing to you a range of high-profile inspirational figures in the British Asian community. This evening, I'm very pleased to be joined by no other than Dr. Kowsar Hoque. Now, I'll tell you a little bit more about Dr. Kowsar Hoque, but before I do that, this is the first show. I want to welcome all the audience to say this is going to be a weekly show where we'll be bringing some of the most wonderful, inspirational figures to speak to you about their story, their journey. And I hope in this new pandemic lockdown season that we're living in, that this 1 hour of inspirational talk will uplift you to feel that, whatever the situation is, that if our fellow British Asians, people that we are speaking to who have done it tremendously well in life, that your good days will return and that your opportunities will return to you. So I hope you'll stay with us for the weekly show, and I hope we will inspire you so that you feel ready and uplifted to inspire the next generation. Without further ado, let me introduce you to my special guest this evening, a doctor by profession, an entrepreneur in his DNA, and a philanthropist. Now, this is a great combination of an activist, a businessman, and a charity person. So in all sense, he is a one-stop shop. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to Dr. Kowsar Hoque. Dr. Kowsar, thank you for taking the time to join us.
Thank you, Abdal. That's a wonderful introduction.
No, you're welcome.
And I want to be your first guest on your new show and looking forward to all the other guests you'll be having on in the coming few weeks.
Thank you very much for joining me. And as is the first show, it's like setting the sort of the boundaries, the goals. We want to sort of set the scene of what we want to achieve in this show. Now, you are an inspirational person. You've been featured on our publication, the British Bangladesh Apparent Inspiration. Somebody who has achieved both professionally, but also in a personal and business sense. Let's go back to when many years ago, when you, as a British Asian in the medical school at UCL, take us sort of that journey. Obviously every British Asian I know wants their son to be a doctor, lawyer, engineer. So you fulfilled your parents' wishes, right? You studied medicine.
Absolutely. Since before I was born, I think my uncle, I was born in Bangladesh. My family were adamant that this eldest child of the eldest brother would become a doctor. And my grandparents and my uncles, aunties, everyone. This is what I was going to become. I came to this country, I went to school, primary school. When I finished primary school, it was time for secondary school. And my headmaster at the time, I went to a primary school in Brixton, was a stern socialist. Then father wanted to send me to a private school. And he said, "Oh, Mr. Hoque, you don't want to be doing that. You want to send him to a good comprehensive school." My dad made a visit to the local comprehensive school, which unfortunately no longer exists, and decided that it wasn't the choice he would wanted to make. And he did something quite drastic. Considering I was 11, they said, "Look, we're going to send you to Bangladesh. You're going to go to a wonderful school. You're going to be surrounded by your family. And, I think this will be really good for you. You'll pick up the culture, religion." Now, you remember I was 11. It was a lot to take on board, and I couldn't understand at the time why I felt like I was being abandoned, But that stay in Bangladesh, when I did that for about 3 years, I went to an American boarding school in Dhaka with my grandmother looking after me, and it has had a profound effect on the person I am now. At the time I didn't see it. But over the years, 1990, I was a 1990 intake because I graduated in 96. And at the time, it was not very common to have a lot of us guys from our sort of backgrounds in med school. But I was in a remarkable year where there were 5 kids from of Bangladeshi origin who were in med school. It was an amazing time. It really was an amazing time. And I graduated in 96, and I've had the privilege of working under some amazing people, from which not only picking up clinical skills, but mannerisms and just getting on in life, in a professional environment. And the journey continues. It's been quite an amazing time.
I'm going to come back to that the experience that you had in Bangladesh, or Bangladeshi background at a prestigious medical school, all trying to be doctors. I mean, was there a bond? Was there a kinship?
So rather than sort of having pockets of people from the same place, same region, same religion or whatever, which we weren't, we were, it was a multi-faith little group. We all had our individual friends and social circles, but we got together on times.
Now, a lot of young people, I mean, I'm going to relate it to today, for whom, university has stopped, or they're thinking of going to university. What advice would you give?
That bridge between A-level and university, it's not a marathon. It's not it's not something you just got to do in one go. Education is a continuous progress and a process. But that year out that some of you will be taking or have had to take, as long as you do something that's productive, and that is building up who you are, not necessarily in the medical field, it could be any set of skills or any experience. As long as you do something that enhances who you are, differentiates you from the next person, I think those sort of things will put you leaps and bounds ahead of applicants and colleagues around you.
Thank you for that. That's very helpful for that. So going back to medical, you qualified, a proud moment for the whole family. And as a young junior doctor or person, you've got to get out there, do the 70 hours or more. Take us back to your early memories of, the long shift and the weekend.
But it was an amazing time. I'm not going to say it wasn't. It was really, really hard work, and it was before the European mandate came in on working hours and conditions. And I was privileged to do my house jobs in two amazing hospitals under two amazing groups of people. I started my clinical skills in surgery very, very early, because I had very, very good mentors, and they could see this guy wanted to learn, he wanted to do stuff, understanding my boundaries, and then I think one of the really big leaps that I made was getting the job at A&E at the Royal London, and the background to that was I wanted to be a surgeon, so they had the most amazing accident emergency department. They had the air ambulance service. It was the definitive trauma service centre in the country, and I think it still is. And they had the highest rate of pen-driven injuries in one of their adjoining hospitals as well. So I really wanted to do this job, community at weddings and sort of family gatherings and stuff. So I very quickly realized that the problems that communities face, regardless of whatever their backgrounds are, inner city problems were the same universally. It was the same problems of issues that other communities were facing. It was just a central problem, But that was a really, really hard-working job, 12-hour shifts. Again, amazing team, absolutely amazing team from top downwards, and that was one of the highlights of my training career. And then I went on to get a training program at UCL, then to the Royal Free, then back to UCL, and it's my training has primarily been in central London.
To the words in Bangla to a person who's about to have surgery, a few words in Bangla, or maybe you didn't, but to have that skill, how reassuring it is for the patient. I mean, could you describe an example of what you did there?
No, that was really, really beneficial. I think from both sides, from the patient side and my side. We used to wear blues in A&E. We used to wear blues, the surgical outfit, and with our sort of stethoscope from a distance, you can't really tell what nationality someone is. But when I used to meet people, what I realized was that my consultations were a lot more fluent, a lot more fast, and quite more effective in certain scenarios. And the community really, really experienced it. But it did get to the stage where A&E were getting phone calls saying, could I speak to so-and-so? Now, that was becoming really quite disruptive. So we reached a stage where, I would not take any external phone calls because it was really hindering, because everyone sort of appreciated having this guy who speaks the language and, getting to the problem really, really quickly. And they wanted to speak to me, but it wasn't working. It was becoming really, really disruptive to shift work.
Yeah.
So we had to stop that.
It was a byproduct of your popularity, so you had to put a stop.
I guess so. Yeah.
Okay, so now we talked about earlier, you said if you're at a young age now and looking for a gap year and so forth, your own experience outside the medical world, be it the educational, be it now as a young junior doctor, is that your father is a very renowned, successful entrepreneur. So tell us about, like most British Bangladeshis who have become successful, are successful, we can trace their success story to either a small shop or a business, a family-run restaurant. Now, your father not just run one, he ran a number of restaurants around South London. Tell us a little bit about how you got involved with that, in amongst the studies and being a junior doctor.
My father's been a great inspiration to me throughout my life, and my parents have made me the person I am. It's integral to who I am. Father was an extremely hardworking guy, and my mother as well. I was the eldest of 6, and they were extremely hardworking people. But from day one thing that my father and mother looked at was the value of education. And we went to, they were extremely involved with all the schooling that we had, and we also had good mentors as well. Just people my father knew, who guided us through, And I was a lot of the time an experimental case. There were a lot of stuff that were practiced on me, which may or may not be being passed on to the siblings, But it was an interesting development in that sense. But father went into the business in '75. I have been helping him with my younger brother, who's now a barrister himself. From the age of, I think, 13, 14, and, I remember, doing my O-levels and stuff and helping him on weekends, and it was exciting. It was exciting, to be there, sort of doing stuff at lunchtime and then getting the pocket money and then being able to go to a nice designer shop and buying stuff. It was really, really nice, but we didn't look at it as a chore. It wasn't a chore. It was a really, really interesting experience. I've tried to do that with my kids as well, because there's certain skill sets that you just cannot get from a textbook or, from a home environment or just talking to friends. Being in the front, dealing with people, doing that sort of customer service, telephone skills, if you can do that sort of stuff, it really, really is an invaluable skill set to whatever profession you go into. Communication is the key. If you can't communicate, and get yourself out of situations or progress a situation or something, whether you're a medic or in retail or in consumer, whatever level of business you are, it becomes quite problematic. So all those sort of things were really, really beneficial. When Dad came to sort of retirement, he realized that he was going to take a little bit of a back foot and concentrate on his sort of charitable work that he set up in Bangladesh. Just to backtrack a bit, in '79, my paternal grandfather was extremely unwell, and Dad had him put on a plane, and he got transferred over here, and he managed to get him treated privately or whatever. And Dad was, he said, look, I'm in a really fortunate position that I've been able to do this. Well, what happens to the rest of my community? And that moment, he pledged that when he was capable and he had the ability, that he would open a hospital for the community. And you know what? In 1998, he opened the largest community hospital in rural Bangladesh. And he did it, his own money, and he did it. And then we went on to set up a charity with him called the Bangladesh Medical Relief Foundation to work with that organization And all that stuff has just continued from.
Yeah, we're going to come to obviously your father's legacy in a sense of the charity, but also what you're doing now. We'll come to that in the later part of the show. But let's dive into the second segment, which is about the business person. So you've done the education, you're qualified, you're saving lives, and people calling you at Royal London asking to help them over the phone. But you then venture into, when your dad's sort of starting to sort of ease off a little bit from the running the number of restaurants and the businesses that he had, you decide to take lead, and obviously as the elder son, tell us about that.
He sat us down. Okay, so my two brothers and myself. I think my sisters had been married by then, so they had their own family, own commitments. And he said, "Look, gentlemen, I'm thinking of retiring. Now, what would you like to do with businesses?" And I looked at him, and I knew where this question was coming from, because that, especially with KT, which is in Kennington, that was his last business, and it was a very personal thing to him. A lot had happened during that time, and and it meant something to him. And my middle brother, who he said, "Look, I'm too busy. I won't be able to." The youngest was still in school, so he couldn't really sort of partake. He was just sort of observing. And I said, "You know what, Dad? I'll take it on." Because I went to UCL. I was surrounded by restaurant, bars, clubs and stuff. I've never drunk, but I enjoyed the theatre of restaurants always. For me, it was, if you want to see the real person, break bread with them, or watch them breaking bread, and you'll see the person. So there was a lot of that going on, and that was my entertainment. And I said, "You know what? I'll take it on as a hobby." And that was in, I think, about 2000. And he was happy, Dad was happy. He was just, "Look, someone just needs to keep an eye on this sort of stuff." And that's where it all started from. So it wasn't really a business decision. It was, I knew how much it meant to my father.
But you want to sort of keep the legacy, and like you said, it was your dad's last venture as in business. We can say it. I mean, we'll talk a little bit about the place, which has now become one of the most famous places in London. But at that time, 20 years ago now, to be precise, you as a junior doctor, you thought, "You know what, this is where my dad put all his energy in. It's his last project. I want to keep the flame burning. I want to keep an eye on it." But little did you know that this will consume a lot of your time. So tell us.
Abdal, I was so busy at that time. As a junior doctor, I remember, even with my kids growing up, with hindsight, you sort of, there's like special momentous occasions, and stuff. But my wife would cover for me, because when you're working shift work and long hours and stuff, we balanced it because my wife took a lot on board, but I couldn't be considered sort of a new age parent. I really wasn't, and I'm really proud that my wife managed to fulfill that. And the boys were really, really understanding, they'd never disturb me in the morning, and, the business became an integral part of, what I did. I'd meet people there. It was a social setting. And the biggest thing, it was fun. It was so different to what I was doing. I could literally just come in and just switch off, and so many wonderful friendships and relationships, both professional and non-professional, have stemmed from that, So it's an integral part of who I am now.
Yeah. Well, I think it's time we kind of share the light on that for viewers who are thinking, well, if I said, one of many attributes and qualities of this particular restaurant in the heart of London, a stone's throw away from Parliament, where in the last 20 years that you've been running it, I think everyone has either come in or has eaten from your restaurant. I mean, I'm just going to name drop because it's out there on social media. The last ever meal to be delivered to Downing Street when David Cameron stood down was from your restaurant. KT is Kennington Tandoori, but it's become sort of very famous throughout the world as KT. You delivered that meal. Did you know, or was it just another one of your regular customers?
No, he was a regular customer. Number 10, number 11 have always been regular customers, and we, from the civil service to the actual politicians and stuff. But that was quite an amazing day because we got that order. And I think they told us to use a specific entrance. So they said, don't use the back, use the front. So normally we sort of keep a very low profile about this sort of stuff, but we realized that I think this was quite a significant moment. So we sort of tweeted it out, and then I think the rest is history. But what a lot of people don't know, on that evening, Theresa May's team were in the KT as well.
So this is exclusive, right? Only on the podcast. You're delivering the last meal to David Cameron as he's packing up and farewell to Downing Street. And Theresa May is about to enter Downing Street. Her team are in your
in the KT
restaurant.
Getting ready.
Yeah. Now, I've been to your restaurant, and I know on a normal day, there are tons of parliamentarians, top civil servants, media personalities. I've met some of the leading journalists who write the scoops from conversation to your customers. I mean, how has that evolved? How have you been able to? I mean, a lot of people will pay a lot of money for marketing companies to bring in celebrities, but you actually can't accommodate everyone.
I haven't ever had to do that, but it's a question of trust. The KT is open for everyone. And the whole thing about the politician side of it, it's all cross-party. The journalist, it's all cross-party. It's literally where people can come and leave their problems at the door, leave their politics at the door. And there's the unwritten rule, whatever happens in the KT will stay in the KT. No story to this day has ever been leaked out to the press by...
apart from the bit when in the House of Parliament debate, John Bercow was one of the, I forget the name of the MP, mentioned it's in Hansard. I mean, hey, how cool is that, right? To have your name dropped in the Parliament debate, that you'll have more time to spend at your favorite restaurant, KT. I mean, this just gets better and better.
Yeah, that was a really, really, really interesting moment because it was significant and it was used at the right time as well. I think there's a lot of usual sort of Hoque shouting and stuff going on between the politicians, and I think Mr. Bercow shouted out that you don't shout at the KT. Will you refrain from shouting in this house? And I think the press went absolutely. It was a nice moment. I was
going to say that sort of rubber stamps your views that everybody's welcome.
Yeah.
You leave your politics outside, and whatever party political you're affiliated to, when you're eating in the KT, you're there as a guest. You're enjoying in a civilized manner. Obviously, we see sometimes parliamentarians shouting and screaming at each other in the green chambers. Now, you've taken KT to a new height, but not just that. You've also divulged yourself in other business. You talked about your wife. Both of you are very successful entrepreneurs, and she has been a backbone in terms of supporting you and the family. But she's also a very successful entrepreneur herself. I mean, what are these kind of things that you would give advice to as people thinking, oh my God, the pandemic has put a break on, property, has put a break on businesses, a new startup. I mean, what's your advice about, staying strong?
I think it's a great moment to reflect as well. I think we've all done this with all our businesses. My wife's primarily into the property sector, which, you don't have to be a sort of someone who's dabbling in it day in and day out to understand that that's taken a big knock. We know that across the board in all sectors, unemployment will be a key factor in the months to come, despite all the sort of efforts government has made, short-term measures. But listen, it's a time to reflect. It's a time to prioritize. What it has done, it has given people what is important in life. Is it all about work? Is it all about, sort of business relationship? It's brought communities together. It's brought families together. It's given time to people say, well, actually, you know what? Do I need to be this slave to a system where I've got to wake up at the crack of dawn, get into public transport, come in, waste about 3 hours traveling to and fro, and go back a very tired and miserable person. And, the day repeats itself on a continuous system. A lot of people will readjust. A lot of companies will readjust. Unfortunately, there will be certain industries, certain businesses that will take a knock. But, this is one of the things, like my career has not been a textbook career of someone going into medicine. It's not about someone with a textbook business life. It's not someone with a textbook social life. I think the ability for the human to adapt is something that will be crucial in order to fare well in this sort of climate in the future.
Thank you for that. I mean, as I said, you're doing it every day, be it professionally, through the business and things. Now, for those of you just tuned in, this is a podcast, a special new show dedicated to profiling inspirational figures in the community. The Be Inspired show will be available for viewing every Tuesday, 7 o'clock. And obviously, backlog catalogues can be viewed at any one time. So stay with us. And this evening, I'm very honored to be joined by an amazing inspirational figure in our community, who is no other than Dr. Kowsar Hoque, an entrepreneur, very much a man who's giving now. And I want to spend a little bit more time talking about, you touched on earlier about your father's setting up the hospital, the Bangladeshi Medical Relief Foundation, and you've recently taken on that. And I know you've done some number of trips with some very high-profile personalities who've gone to assist you and aid you and visit some of the work. So if I could sort of now kind of touch on the work that you've sort of taken over, not just your father's business, but also taken over his philanthropy work, but you've now made it yourself. So let's talk a little bit about the sort of the charity side, the giving side of your legacy. Okay,
that has been something that, again, it stems from my family. Not only just my parents, but my uncles as well. It's and it's part of our religion and our culture. To give. And to give doesn't mean to reduce what you have. It's actually to gain. It may not be just in money terms, but you gain in many different ways. So what I try and do is make that whole giving part of what I do, whether it's in business, whether it's in social surroundings, and it's just part of what I do. So we as a family set up this organization, the Bangladesh Medical Relief Foundation. I think that was in 98, 99. And since that time, we were concentrating on primary healthcare and prevention, clean water projects and education projects, And pretty soon that we realized that a lot of the health problems that at that time that were happening at the rural level were all sort of water related, waterborne. So we came up with a clean water initiative, which was called the Well Wishers Project. And I think I put it on pause for the last 4 years, but up to that time, we'd done about 4,000 sort of wells in different communities in Bangladesh. So this is not a Sylhet project. I've been working in far-reaching areas of Bangladesh, from Rangpur to Borguna, Machishore, all this sort of stuff. And that's been a really, really rewarding project. To take something that we take for granted. You need water, Abdal. You just wanted water. You just went to your kitchen. You just poured water. Imagine, in this day and age, where you've literally got to walk like miles to get fresh water. Stagnant sources of water are available. And this is what people resort to if they don't have that facility. And it's instantaneous. The result is instantaneous. You don't have to wait. And the happiness and the life-changing attributes of that, it's just phenomenal. And, we've, and another amazing project that we did was, I'm so proud of, because earlier this year when that cyclone hit again in Bengal, there was a news report on one of the Bangladeshi channels, and my brother sent me, someone sent me a clip saying, Baba, Baya, your cyclone shelter is on TV and it rescued 700 people. And this was in the Bay of Bengal, a place called Majashore. Mostly inhabitants are fishermen. And during Cyclone Sidr, I think half the community wiped out. And after the Cyclone Sidr, a lot of organizations and Bangladeshi governments and stuff, they wanted to make more permanent solutions to this problem. Mm-hmm. And we wanted to be part of that, and we wanted to do that. and we built this structure on an island, and I had some amazing people involved with that, from Bangladesh and from here, and with very close and amazing friends that I have here. We managed to raise the funds, and we were the first cycling shelter to be built after that. And it functions as a school all year round, the building on stilts, and during times of flooding or what we had recently, the community go and take refuge on the first floor, and it was amazing. 700 people, were saved from harm's way this year. So it's a project that will just carry on, and we've done a lot of preventive sort of care, and talking about this sort of stuff and meeting different people for business and stuff. I've also in the last 3 years or so come to know an extremely nice pool of young British Bangladeshis who are all doing very well in their own fields, both medical, both sort of in the business world, in other professionals, who want to give back to their community in Bangladesh and to here, but need a conduit to work for it. And I've always been a bit dubious about just working with just people, because my goals are very well defined, and I know where I'm heading towards. But I really like these young individuals who were extremely passionate, and I think very, very genuine. And we went on in last year, or 98, but end of 98 to, end of 2018. 18 to set up the Bangladesh Health Development Initiative, and that has been a real success in a very short period of time. And we're running these sort of pop-up project clinic medical camps in Bangladesh, running awareness campaigns, dengue campaigns, during what's been happening during the pandemic, doing PPE and various other things. And we've got a whole group of volunteers here, a fantastic group of volunteers in Bangladesh, all with the common goal of making that difference to the communities that we're being brought up in, and giving back, both here and in Bangladesh. And it's been a real privilege, and I hope this organization will just keep growing and growing and growing.
Excellent. Now, I want to come into the end of the show. We've got not long to go, but I want to sort of bring, as I was trying to sort of in the beginning say, your experience of Bangladesh as a student at the early years, that experience of understanding both the culture and the difficulties, you coming back, fulfilling your potential to become a doctor, then serving the inner London, some of the most deprived communities, and that understanding of needing and having that additional skills of both relating, understanding, communicating, then taking that back to the business where a lot of the British Bangladeshi successful people that we know from both BB Power and others that have had a starting point in the catering industry. Diversifying your portfolio through your wife and you working to do property and other things. I mean, what gives you the most satisfaction? The medical, the professional, obviously the family life is important, the balance. You said had the support that you've received from your wife and the support you've had from your parents. Now you're blessed with your own children, seeing them developed as wonderful human beings like you had the opportunity to. What gives you that sense of satisfaction? What sort of keeps you inspiring to want to do more?
The drive, the chase. Okay. It's my adrenaline. And I'm a result-orientated person, and I have goals, and I will really give it my utmost to get to that. And I've always aimed high. I went into the restaurant business by accident, but I wanted to be the best. I wanted to be one of the best, not necessarily the best. But and it's not for recognition or fame, for my personal satisfaction.
Well, listen, it's not about who has the Michelin stars. It's about who has the coverage. And once again, I'm not name dropping, but this is just because of what the factual evidence, be it the Hansard, be it inside Parliament, your name's being dropped, some of the leading figures who come to your restaurant, but also the likes of GQ magazine. I mean, I remember that last year, was it, when you did the Brexit thing?
Oh, 2000.
Yeah, I think people. Yeah, I think we should share some joke in a sense that that was quite an amazing PR stunt or a great.
It wasn't Abdal. It wasn't a PR stunt. It was actually, I think, what it became a PR stunt.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
It didn't stem from that. I think what happened was that Parliament, the whole Brexit thing was going on, and then Parliament resumed. And in that time, we'd actually changed the menu in the KT for that summer. We became sort of, with the way lifestyles were changing, a lot more conscious about, gluten and nut allergies and all this sort of stuff. And we became the first restaurant to be completely gluten-free and completely nut-free. Okay, and I thought, that was the business. It was it was a good thing, but it wasn't like the most important thing to happen in the United Kingdom. But the news on the first day of Parliament was that parliamentarians were so upset that the KT had changed their menu, and you'd think the world was about to end.
Absolutely.
And I thought, this is ridiculous, and I said, you know what, I'm going to give them something that they actually understand, and we came up with the idea that, we'll give the people the choice, we'll hold the referendum on the new menu. And I remember you came that night.
I was the presiding officer. I was counting the votes.
We built a polling booth. We had politicians from all sides. We had journalists from all the major publications, and it was an amazingly fun night. I mean, we even had strangers coming from outside saying, "Oh, I need to express my democratic right to vote." To which I replied, "But what are you voting for?" No, but that was, I don't think there was a publication we didn't do. It was really, really widely. I mean, people.
I remember seeing that wonderful photo of you in the GQ, and a small phrase saying a councillor from Tower Hamlets was counting the vote. I mean, how? But look, I mean, the reason I raised this, right? When people are struggling. I mean, and I know a lot of people who are with restaurants and with businesses, small businesses or medium-sized businesses are struggling, but it's about taking what's there, innovating and projecting it well with confidence and allowing people to pick it up. So the reason I brought that story up is because, you went with the mood of the nation. I mean, the whole uncertainty of Brexit at that time. And, you did something.
Yeah, Abdul, I must put that in. It was her idea. She actually turned around and said, well, why don't we give people the choice? What is it they like, the old one or the new one? And, coming back to like the present time, when just before the government brought in the lockdown, we'd sort of anticipated and when people sort of knew where we were heading towards. But we literally adapted our business in 24 hours, and that is down to not just myself, but to an amazing team that I have working for me, and they just wanted to make it work. And and from what I mentioned right at the beginning of starting work experience and working in different sectors, communication, that was the key. We knew our audience, and we weren't trying to voice to everybody in London, but we knew who our audience was, and we knew how to communicate with them. And we did, and we just did that, and we adapted. And it's been challenging. But, that's what makes business so exciting. If it all becomes mundane and day-to-day sort of becomes routine, one loses focus and interest. But we managed to adapt to the changing mood and continue with the business and making it work. And I think, and I'm so proud of the team that I have, that we have managed to make it work, and we became a beacon for other businesses.
I was just going to say that, knowing your shared experience with me about how you modified the restaurant and the workforce, and more importantly, how you took care of your workforce and making them, safe travel and journey back and forth home. So, through my business network, I've shared your experience. A lot of people say, look, this is what you need to do. You need to reduce your menu. You need to look after your staff. This was all very good. now we can't finish without talking about your Katie's love for feeding. Now you've been, I know it became in the first week of pandemic, the sort of everybody was feeding, the doctors and nurses, and became a quite of a national thing. I mean, I facilitated, I think, over 3,500 meals to our local hospital. A lot of restaurants and business people in East London coming to me. But you've been doing this on a regular basis. Now, you were responsible, I should say, of feeding the wonderful doctors and nurses looking after Boris Johnson when he became an inpatient and these guys in St. Thomas's. Let's finish on that. I mean, you fed Cameron on his way out. You fed Mrs. May when she was coming in. And you were the person responsible for keeping the doctors fed, and they were looking after Boris.
I know what it's like to be doing a really hard shift and then being absolutely exhausted and having that luxury of someone just giving a nice warm hot meal. Okay, and it's not just doctors; it's doctors, nurses, and all the working staff. And we decided, like really early on, that we were going to support our local hospital. And I have colleagues there, and I have friends there, and so I knew the experiences that they were going through. And also with when I was training at UCL, I was a junior doctor, and I remember when the nail bomb went off that weekend. It just sort of changes people's lives and perspectives. And people just the people who work in the NHS and stuff are amazing, selfless people. That is, I think people really
that's without a doubt, yes,
understand that now more than ever. And that has been a pivotal changing moment in British culture. But we decided that we would do this distribution of food on Mondays, Wednesdays, and I think also we wanted to feed the families of key workers and their families on Fridays. So alongside the local church and my friend Angus Agard, who's the canon there, we decided to set that project up. The food distribution with St. Thomas's that we decided to do with the clergy as well. I mean, we've even had the Archbishop of Canterbury, on numerous occasions lending a hand as a volunteer distributing the food.
If the Speaker of the Parliament, Mr. Burko, as your regular customer, you got yourself a new delivery man. I mean, forget Uber driver. This is the Archbishop of Canterbury. I mean, it just gets so good for you guys.
No one's been asked to do this sort of stuff. Abdal, this is the amazing thing. People have genuinely, from their own accord, come on board. We didn't ask them. We just turned up. A friend of mine who's also helping me with this, who's again a friend of mine who's been involved with the Bangladesh Medical Relief Foundation. He's been out to Bangladesh a couple of times. He's taken his kids who went to Marlborough at the time, out there to do the charity work, the wells and stuff. He volunteered himself. He said, Kowsar, I'm going to take this food in every day, every week with my son, and I'm going to distribute this food. And these are people who've come to me. I haven't actually been on a tannoy or done any social media inviting people. People have come and said, look, we want to be part of this. And that's the amazing thing about the British spirit as well. You have to understand, when at moments like this, whatever religion, whatever politics, whatever social background, we do come together, and we make it work, and we have made it work, and that was the overwhelming bit of all this sort of stuff, how amazing the unity of communities have become during this whole course of what we've been through and what we're still going through. It has made us close, despite our sort of obvious differences.
Well, Dr. Kowsar, all I want to say is, unfortunately, the time has come to the end of our first show, but I'm sure people watching at home, wherever they are in the world, will know that what a remarkable story of yourself, your partner, your wife, your family, the legacy that your father started, and you, the second generation, carrying on the work both here but also in Bangladesh, and also from what you're teaching your children. So that sort of the third generation will pick up and will inspire the next generation and also themselves to sort of carry on the legacy of both being successful in the chosen field that they want to do, but also giving back to the community and bringing people on board. So it's not just about me doing it, it's bringing people, being that connector of people and inspiring others to kind of do the good work in both here, but also in our roots in Bangladesh and other places that we come from. Well, look, what I want to finish off by asking you is to sort of round off with a quick piece of advice for those watching at home, as we said, the pandemic has changed people's life, upside down, is to sort of finish off on a sense of a spirit of high note, to say, look, we will overcome this, and when we do, we'll be stronger. So over to you to finish off the show. But before I do so, thank you once again for taking the time out to talk to us, and I hope that people at home feel inspired and have been inspired by your journey and your continuous effort to do good, both as a business person, but using your knowledge to inspire others. So over to you to finish off for us, please.
Abdul, thank you. Listen, I really appreciate you having me on as the first guest on your new program, and I hope, and look forward to great success and the people you're going to bring on board to inspire people to do well. We as a global inhabitants of the world have been through an enormous change, with what's been happening, and it's affected every single person on this planet. At one moment in time, 4 billion people have been locked down. I mean, this is extraordinary, so it's very difficult to actually give a straightforward advice to people, because none of us have been through any of this. But what I will say is that, it has given everyone time to reflect. People are going through difficult times, but we're all sharing that difficulty. So I understand with the youngsters who are about to do their exams, their GCSEs, their A levels. I have a son of mine who was going to do his A levels, and I know how traumatic that is not to be able to do those exams and have that smooth transition into the next stage of their sort of education or career. But listen, it's not all hope, doom and gloom. Life is a journey. You will be faced with adversities, and cling on to everything else around you. Make use of your friends, your family. In this day and age of technology, you're not isolated. This is, like what we're doing now. Normally I think something like this you do in a TV studio, yes. But you're doing it on a sort of audio videos that everyone has. So you're not isolated. There are lots of sources of help out there. The human race is amazing. We know how to adapt. We will adapt. We've been around for a long time, and we will be around, inshallah, for many generations to come. But stay focused. All right, stay focused and hard work, and learn to give. Learn to give. Giving doesn't reduce a person. It only enhances the qualities of who you are. In whatever capacity. We're not necessarily talking about monetary. In terms of kindness. Giving can take all different forms. Balance it out. Balance out life. It's not just, oh my God, I've got to become a lawyer, or I've got to do this or whatever. Keep that focus wide. And those sort of things will help you, whatever field of work or career path or business world that you need to go to, or that you are in.
Thank you so much once again for your invaluable time and sharing your journey. And I hope people at home feel inspired by what you've said. I know we in both the production team have been very privileged to have you as our first guest. And thank you once again. So, viewers, I hope you feel been inspired by Dr. Kowsar's journey from starting early on as a medic to a very successful entrepreneur. But as he says in his own words, giving doesn't reduce. Giving doesn't necessarily mean just about money. It's about a smile or pointing people in the right direction. I hope we've been able to give you some sense of inspirational words and encouragement. Well, all I will say to you is that this is our first show. Stay with us for next week, where we'll bring another inspirational person to talk to you about their journey. Until next time, stay with us, stay tuned, stay safe. Good evening.